Lately I've been getting a lot of questions about song structure, so I'd like to take a minute and just explain what the different song sections are for. The song sections each serve a purpose, and if you don't know what that purpose is, if you're not clear on that, you won't use the sections in the most effective way to really captivate your listeners, which is what they're designed to do. So over the last 50 years or so, the verse-chorus song structure has become the dominant song structure, where prior to that it was something else. It was the AABA song form and various others earlier in history. So let's talk about verse-chorus songs. So starting with the verse and the chorus. The verse basically is the section that tells the story. And the chorus is the part that summarizes the story. Additionally, chorus means literally a group of people singing together. That's what the definition of a chorus is. So the chorus section of your song is the section of the song that everybody should be able to sing to. And in order to make that happen, there's certain things you have to do within a chorus to make it easy for a large group of people to remember and sing along with your lyrics and to walk away remembering the name of your song. So there's certain things related to putting the hook in there and keeping things a little bit simpler than they are in the verse, not as conversational, a little more to the point. There's specific techniques you use within a chorus to really make it so that everybody can sing along with your chorus and remember it. The verse will tell the story, so it will tend to be a little more conversational. Although, there are variations of this. But those are the main purposes of those two sections. Sometimes you'll need a pre-chorus. A pre-chorus connects the verse and the chorus for one of two reasons. Either musically, it's just too much of a jump from one section to the other. It's too much of a different musical section, and you need some kind of music to either build up to it, to the chorus, or connect them in some way. Or lyrically, the meaning in the chorus is not clear how it relates to the meaning in the verse, so you need a transitional explanation. And so that's what a pre-chorus will do. Often the pre-chorus is shorter than the verse and the chorus. A pre-chorus will tend to be half the length. So if a verse is 8 measures and a chorus is 8 measures, you might have a 4-measure pre-chorus, sometimes 5 or 3. An off-balance pre-chorus can add to that pushing ahead feeling to spill you into the chorus. When you have a verse and chorus, or a verse, pre-chorus, and chorus, they usually repeat because the story has to develop. The second verse, the story should be a development of the first verse. It shouldn't be the same thing talked about in a different way. It should develop so that the story is continuing along, leading to some kind of climax within the song. And after you repeat the verse and chorus, or the verse, pre-chorus, and chorus, if you repeat it a third time, people will tune it out. And I'll tell you why. Because the brain has evolved to understand patterns. Once we recognize a pattern, something is understandable to us. That's why when there's repetition in music, like repeating a verse and a chorus, it's like, oh, I get it. It makes sense to me. Like, subconsciously, the brain feels like it's recognized the musical pattern. And at that point, can tune it out and no longer has to pay attention because it already has found the pattern. So that's why after something is repeated twice, it's a really good time to add something different, something new and fresh. And that's why the bridge usually comes after the second chorus. Now, a bridge is a new musical section with some kind of different music, and with lyrics, it will be a different lyrical perspective. So, for instance, if the verse and chorus has been talking about how much of a struggle everything is in life, then maybe the bridge could talk about, well, there's hope. Maybe there could be a better world from everything I've learned. So it's some kind of different perspective will usually happen in the bridge. You don't want to just repeat material that should be in the third verse. You want it to be a different angle on your story. Alternately, rather than a bridge, you could just put a solo in there. Maybe it doesn't need a new lyrical perspective. Maybe everything was said the way it needed to be said in the verse and choruses, and you don't need a bridge. So don't put one in if you don't need it. The same with the pre-chorus. If you don't need it, don't use it. If you're using things you don't need, they're not helping. So after the second chorus, put in a bridge or a solo, or an instrumental interlude, which is similar to a solo, except it's more like a composed melody. rather than somebody just jamming on an instrument. Or a breakdown section where the instruments thin out and become more sparse. So those are the four things that typically will go after the second chorus, either a bridge, a breakdown section, a solo, or an instrumental interlude. Now, after that happens, and by the way, you could put more than one of them in there. You could put a bridge and a solo. If you put all four of those sections in there, it might be a little too elaborate for the song, but it could work. You have to feel it out. Next, after that occurs, the third verse or third chorus will be fresh again because there's been something to break it up. So now when you return to either a verse and a chorus or just a chorus, lately people have been leaving out the third verse completely because often songs build up energy, and if you bring it down to a verse again, it could get a little bit a drop in energy in the third verse, but it can work. It used to work really well 30, 40 years ago. People would always have a third verse. Now it's not so common. So then everything's fresh again, and people are remembering the hook in the chorus that they heard the first two times, and so by the third chorus, if you established a strong hook, everybody should be singing along with it, and that's a good time to repeat your chorus. So you're gradually building your song from more verses at the beginning to more choruses at the end where everybody's singing along. Other sections that you can add would be an intro and an outro, which are just musical sections so that you're not abruptly jumping in to a verse and singing. Although that can work depending on the song and what your intent is emotionally. So sometimes songs just start right away with lyrics, but more often than that there's some kind of intro, and at the end sometimes there's just stop, and right at the last note of the chorus the song ends. Other times you may need an outro, which is so it can be a repeat of the intro, or it can be some new musical section to just transition out of the song gradually, rather than stopping at the end of the chorus. So those are the functions of the sections in a verse-chorus song. If you utilize them for what they're meant for, and you know what they're meant for, you can really take advantage of the structure, because the structure has evolved because this is what works to keep people's attention. It's not, it's formulaic, yes, but it's there for a reason. It's because it works. So if you don't know what the sections are for, your chorus is going to sound like a verse sometimes, and people aren't going to sing along with it, and there can be all kinds of problems. So understanding this can help you a lot. I suggest with this information, just go through your songs and see if you're using the sections in the way that they're supposed to function.